Let's dig into why Turning Point USA is gearing up to sue small creators. In this video, he has several claims, but I put in the ones that was actually important that we can really dig into.
This week, I received a letter from Turning Point titled Demand to Cease and Desist Defamatory Comments. This is the first step when someone sues you for defamation. I know there are a lot of people out there making videos about Turning Point, so you should pay attention to this. They have started sending out cease and desist letters, and for some reason, they've decided to start with me. Apparently, they cannot handle the criticism from my teeny tiny YouTube channel. This letter is showing the world the type of organization Turning Point has become under Erika Kirk. So we're going to go through this letter. Turning Point states in the letter, Turning Point entities are not looking for litigation, rather their interest is in the truth and making sure the public record is accurate. Of the hundreds of people posting on social media about Turning Point, why are they targeting me? Why are they so worried about what I am saying that they're sending me legal letters?
They said that they don't want to sue him and they're just looking for the truth. That's where they messed up at. So now, as long as people are saying the truth, you can't really come after them and sue. But in order for anybody to know that it's a lie, you would have to verify that it's a lie first. So unless you can verify that it's a lie, then it will automatically be looked at as the truth. So that they're putting themselves in a very, very bad place just to even start to come after small creators because they don't like what they say. And the reason why I think they went after him first, if he is the first one, is because he's getting into the finances. He's talking about their IRS forms. He's talking about the company itself. It's not really what he's talking about. He's talking about how the money is funny. And Charlie Kirk was saying that the money is funny. This company is built on nothing but dollars. So if it is going to be built on dollars, especially from donors, you're messing it up if you start telling people that they're transferring money out of certain accounts to certain people and certain independent contractors is making millions of dollars. So they're funneling the money into something else. You're going to piss some people off. And I think that's what he did.
Charlie Kirk ordered a Doge-style audit that was never conducted. Here is my first problem with this letter. They do not include the actual quote that I said in the video. This is a paraphrased statement of what I said, and they are saying that the paraphrased statement is a lie. You have to tell me exactly what I said that was supposedly a lie, and they do this through the whole letter. So my request to this lawyer in future letters, because I'm assuming there's going to be more, please include the actual quote that I said so that I can respond to your accusation. But I'm going to at least try to interpret what they are saying. I spoke in my video about a memo that Charlie Kirk wrote 8 days before he was murdered. In the cease and desist letter, they say, indeed, Turning Point USA's COO announcement concerning the Doge effort never used the word audit. So this is breaking news. Turning Point's attorney has now confirmed that the Charlie Kirk memo is authentic. We now have legal confirmation this did happen. It seems like their problem with my video is that I called it a Doge audit, when in the memo it is written as Doge effort. So they want everyone to use the word effort and not use the word audit.
Okay.
This letter is seriously hurting my head. Whatever word you use, the memo is clearly talking about an evaluation of Turning Point. But we cannot use the word audit. We have to call it an effort, or they are going to sue you. The letter goes on to say, the announcement makes clear that Turning Point USA was doing what it has always pledged to donors, ensuring it was being efficient with its funds and time and making changes to foster greater efficiencies. Moreover, Turning Point USA hires a third-party audit firm to conduct an audit every year.
Turning Point do have a third-party audit system that they do every year, but Charlie Kirk would know that, right? So for him to say that he want a Doge-style audit, if they already do an audit, will automatically tell you that it's two different things, right? He wanted something different than what we normally do. Like, yeah, we're going to do that yearly one, but we're also going to do this because he was trying to figure out exactly where the money was flowing because he knew something was off. And it just so happened that he said this a week before, slightly over a week, 8 days before he was ended. That's ironic. And then 2 days before that, he said that they were going to end him, whoever they are. Yeah, we can speculate this, but we don't want to call it an audit. Let's call it an effort. He wanted a Doge effort. Sure.
Next statement is, in 2023, $650,000 may have been funneled from Turning Point USA through Turning Point Action to Turning Point PAC to evade campaign finance restrictions. They are referencing this chart from my video. They claim money actually went from Turning Point Action to Turning Point USA as a reimbursement for event expense. There was nothing nefarious about that transfer. I'm not sure they are contradicting what I am saying. According to their own statement, Turning Point USA used their own donor funds to pay for an event on behalf of Turning Point Action, freeing up Turning Point Action funds, which they then transferred to Turning Point PAC. They are saying that later, Turning Point Action reimbursed Turning Point USA for that event. But that doesn't change what I was saying. Additionally, in my video, I specifically said, again, this is not necessarily illegal if they structure their transactions correctly and utilize campaign finance loopholes, but it certainly looks unethical. That is my opinion. This money did move between the organizations. I'm allowed to have my opinion. On November 30th, I posted a video called Explosive, More Fraud at Turning Point USA. They say these are false claims. There was more fraud at Turning Point USA. I assume they are referring to the title of the video here.
It's not more fraud, it's just the same amount of fraud. That's even more funny. The claim 3 was just, to be honest, that's a lot of rich people jargon. That's how rich people move in certain instances. That's why a lot of rich people avoid taxes a lot, because they just know how to move their money. There are apartments in New York City that's worth $100+ million that nobody goes to. You spend $100 million on an apartment that you never slept in. And they would do that to just basically store their money in a certain place. So that's things that rich people will do. That's not illegal, but I'm just saying that's things that rich people will do. But they do know how to move their money and keep it in certain trust and move it into different places when it comes to doing business. And as he said, it's not illegal, it's just unethically. Rockefeller did the same exact thing when he started to create his own monopoly. And it's crazy because they didn't want him to be a monopoly owner, but he still ended up becoming a monopoly owner. He just knew how to move the money. And instead of having everything in his name and in his companies, he would just make a trust. And then the trust owns the companies, but he still owns the trust. So as long as the trust owns the companies, then he can move the money the way he needs the money to move and still have ownership in everything. So instead of him owning Exxon, this is gas stations, Exxon, the Mobil gas station, and the rest of them, he can say, all right, I don't own those. The trust owns all of those. Turning Point USA is doing the same thing. It's immoral to move money in a certain way, but it is legal to do that. And although they was trying to stop him from having a monopoly, still had a monopoly. You just got to learn how to move the money. That's why he's saying it's immoral, just not illegal. But it's not more fraud. It's just the same amount.
They, of course, are saying that there is no fraud at Turning Point USA. The content of the video is me going over the evidence of fraud and sharing my opinion. Now, technically, a true statement would be that no one has been convicted of fraud at Turning Point USA. But whether fraud is going on right now is an opinion. For the sake of avoiding miscommunication, I can change the title of the video if that makes them more happy. I already changed it from More Fraud at Turning Point USA to More Fraud at Turning Point USA, allegedly. The next statement is that America's Turning Point had ghost employees. The letter explains, America's Turning Point had 80 employees in FY23 and 108 in FY24. There was, however, an inadvertent error in America's Turning Point filing which failed to note these employees, and America's Turning Point is in the process of rectifying that inadvertent error. So I was right. There was something wrong. They did put incorrect information on the 990 form. There were missing employees they were not reporting.
I wonder why. I wonder why it was missing employees they was not reporting.
Have confirmed it. And just to be clear, this was not some minor mistake. This was around 80 employees that were somehow missing. Their complaint is that it's not correct to use the term ghost employees. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that opinion, but that is their position. How are they going to sue me for this? They admit that I am right that the employees were not reported correctly. They don't like the wording I used. How is that defamatory? The next statement is that donations to Turning Point Action increased from $10.7 million in FY23 to $27.2 million in FY24, and suggested that Tyler Boyer may have been recruiting these donors away from Turning Point USA to undermine MAGA and benefit himself. Again, this is not exactly what I said, and I find their paraphrasing of my statements a little silly. They are claiming that Tyler Boyer never tried to undermine Charlie Kirk in any of his decisions. Tyler Boyer never tried to benefit himself in his role at Turning Point. I find those claims a little excessive. What I actually say in my video was sharing my opinion on the financials, which I'm allowed to do. When you see Tyler Boyer's organization growing so much faster than Charlie Kirk's organization, that looks to me like a corporate takeover from the inside.
There's no way you can have this and it's somebody not taking advantage of something. 4% to 150% in the same, is it the same time frame? Oh, they started from here. So, and damn, less than the same. That's crazy. Yes. It's no way. It's impossible. Unless you are deliberately trying to do something. And this is Turning Point USA against Turning Point Action.
From the inside. That is my opinion, which I'm allowed to have. On December 7th, I posted a video called Top 10 Clowns of the Year. In this video, I called Turning Point my #1 Clown of the Year. I talked about the now infamous interview with Turning Point's chief security person talking about the day that Charlie Kirk was murdered. I point out the massive contradiction where he says they were not allowed to fly drones. Then I show the interview with Frank Turek where he says he was watching drone footage with Charlie Kirk. This part is breaking news because I'm not aware this has ever been discussed. The lawyer in this letter says the following: there was no discrepancy. UVU prohibited Turning Point USA from flying drones for security purposes during the event, but did allow a Turning Point USA media production drone to briefly fly over the location before the event to collect limited B-roll footage. First of all, how could this be defamatory if I had no idea about any of this? Second, I find this explanation absurd. You are telling me that the security team was not allowed drones, but the media team was? That is the official explanation from Turning Point's lawyer.
That is absolutely absurd. And the fact is that Charlie Kirk paid millions to his security team for them to have all that done, and they did absolutely nothing. And I would assume, just if I'm going to pay millions of dollars, I would assume that if you cannot secure the area, then we just don't go to the area. And if they're not going to allow you to fly drones and have people on the roof, then my client is not safe. That's the reason why you would even ask to fly drones and have people on roofs. Duh. And if you can't do that, then there's just no deal. We just walk away. It's not worth risking your life for something so simple as a drone or having your security people on the roof. Obviously, the roof could be accessed because, as they said, the roof could be accessed by students. And then now they're making me think. See, this is what happens when you start talking a lot, because now I'm thinking. If the roof was easy to access, and we're going to assume, because the way they was making it seem as Tyler Robinson did not scale the wall, that somehow he had to be inside the school, and then that roof that he was on is easily accessed, like anybody can just go through the door and go to that roof. So students can easily access this roof, and anybody can just go there. Why wouldn't security be able to access the same roof at the school that they're having their client work in? How does that even make a slight bit of sense if it's just a public roof that anybody can go on? That's gonna strike me as a big lie. But even if, let's just say that they couldn't get there, why would you even want to continue whatever it is if the person is not safe? And if you couldn't be on the roof, then it will make sense for you to be inside the other building where the other people had the footage of the person on the roof. So you could at least have eyes on the roof, right? You pay millions of dollars for this. Why wouldn't you have eyes on the roof where Charlie Kirk could have been, was vulnerable. That's for a reason.